We'd like to welcome you back to Holy Living with Huff and Sal. I'm Huff.
I'm Sal.
All right, so we're kind of coming to you a little bit late today because we had a crazy weekend, and so we're a little behind schedule. But you know, April's going to be Finance Month, and I've been able to sit down with a few folks, and we're going to be sharing those in the next 3 weeks. Right? We chose Finance Month for April because it's tax month. Thankfully, we're no longer like we used to be. We get our taxes done a lot earlier instead of waiting to the last minute, right? So, as you age, you look at those things a little differently.
Yeah.
Instead of April 14th at midnight trying to get your taxes done. But so because of tax season being in April, we decided to make April Finance Month. However, this is the first Monday in April, and we want to talk to you about something much different and, dare I say, more serious.
Much more.
Holy living is about helping folks, understand and have, be healthy in the whole area of life, right? When we think about health, being healthy, we think of physically, right? Being physically healthy. But we've kind of broken our being down to 5 areas, right? So we have our physical, we have our emotional, we have our financial, right? We have our spiritual, but we also have our mental health.
Yes.
And what the, driving factor behind today's topic is what's happened recently in the news. All right, so we had another school shooting down in Nashville, right outside of Nashville, where a young lady went in and fired upon, I think it was killing 5, if I remember correctly. What happens as soon as you have a school shooting, people want to start talking about guns. And in particular, assault, what they call assault type rifles. Now, you might think, oh yeah, he's going to talk about guns now. So that's not what we want to talk about. And, is guns something maybe that needs to be talked about? Sure, I'm fine with that. We own some. Some we inherited, some we bought. Most of it is for protection, home protection. We live up in the woods, right? So it'd be easy to kind of come and try to rob us, honestly, because the way our house is tucked up in the hill. And so we do have home protection stuff. I'm not in the guns. I know people that own them. I know people that own ARs, and I know people that own bump stocks and all those things that you hear people talk about. But the people that I know haven't used them in that type of way. But when people talk about assault rifles, how about we talk about this? Any weapon used in an assault is an assault weapon. Cain used an assault weapon on Abel.
Yeah.
It was a rock. The reason I bring that up is because there's such a bigger topic that seems to not be discussed when we hear these shootings.
Yeah. Now
listen, if they were to ban high capacity magazines, would that save some lives? It might. It might save some lives. I mean, so instead of a shooter shooting 10 people, maybe they only get 5. But isn't 5 still too many?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the thing is there's gun shootings all the time. It's only when there's a mass shooting that people want to bring this up, and they politicize this terribly, and it's disgusting. And so I think the real topic that we need to get to today is mental health. So I went back and did a little reading, and I'm certainly not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I've had my dealings with mental health, not only myself and depression, but also other people that we've dealt with in the church, that have wrestled with this, right? Wrestled with mental health is not just depression, right? There's all kind of things, bipolar, schizophrenia. There's all kind of gender dysphoria. We hear a lot about that now. Anxiety.
OCD.
Yeah, this is all. Mental health is a plethora of possibilities, right? And I'm sure everybody, to some degree, has something they wrestle with in their mind. It's just we're humans, right? And dare I say, we're flawed humans.
We all are flawed. We all have something.
So I looked at a couple of these shootings, and one of the ones was last year at Oxford High School in Michigan on November 30th, 2021. Now, I don't remember hearing a bunch about this in the news that I can recall. It might have been because he didn't use an assault-type weapon like the one used in Nashville recently, right? They also released video. You could see the type of weapon she had, and it was more like an AR kind of thing. So that made the news, I think, bigger. But a young man who was 15 years old, his name was Ethan, he fatally shot 4 students and wounded 7 others with a gun that his parents purchased for him as a Christmas gift. It was a handgun, right? So it wasn't what they want to consider an assault style weapon, right? We're talking about a handgun. And I could lay out an M16, an AR-15, and a couple 45s, out here on this table and load them, right? And leave them laying on that table completely loaded with the safeties off. And they're not dangerous until somebody picks them up. They're inanimate objects. But when someone picks them up and has some kind of delusional thought or something going on that causes them to either have rage and want to take revenge or hurt, that they're trying to find a way to deal with the pain.
Yeah. Could be guilt.
It could be guilt. I mean, there's all kind of reasons that make people do things, but those guns aren't dangerous until somebody picks them up and has the notion to use them against someone.
Yeah.
That's when they become dangerous. So this young man who was 15, his neighbor says this. They live next door to these folks who actually tried to help this young man, but they said this: he was never ever okay. And I honestly believe he could have been, said Suzanne Jennerson, their former neighbor. And they talked about this young man who was left home alone a lot for his parents to go out and be social and to drink and all that. And when he did go over to the neighbor's house while they were gone, he says, "I got to go back home. I'll get in trouble if they find out I was here." This family actually went to the parents and tried to say, "Listen, if you go somewhere, let him stay with us," because they had a son his age. And they ended up getting in an argument, it says, right? So anyway, this young man ended up, firing on and killing 4 and wounding 7, right? And the neighbor said they had offered to babysit the preteen while his parents were out socializing and drinking, something they often did without their son, so that he could spend time with her son and husband instead of being home alone. But they would not do that, right? They said they would go out and drink, leave him alone, and that he was scared, and he would come over to my house and say, "I can't be here because I'm going to get in trouble." They said Ethan didn't have a prayer as a child, she told the Free Press, adding that she doesn't know what her family could have done differently. So these neighbors are so hurt because they wonder if they could have done something different for this young man.
Yeah.
And so they go on down in this article talking about this. And what happened, it says Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald revealed that in December 2021, that the school officials met with Ethan and his parents to discuss violent drawings he created just hours before his deadly rampage. The suspect was able to convince them during the meeting that the concerning drawings were for a video game that he was designing, apparently. His parents allegedly flat refused to take their son home, McDonald said at the time.
Wow.
So the school brought the parents in to try to address him and these violent drawings that he had created, and they tried to pass it off as just designing for a video game. But even then, designing this for a video game, there's still those thoughts there, right? And so, of course, it's easy for us after the fact to say they should have saw it. It's easy for that. But it says his parents flat refused to take their son home. So when they were done the discussion, I guess they said that maybe you should take him home and sit down and you guys should have a talk or something, And they refused to do that, and I don't want to read more into this than what's written, but that's kind of the way it reads, right? And then it says this: shortly after his parents left, Ethan took a gun out of his backpack and killed 4 students.
Oh my goodness.
The day the school brought his parents in to talk to this young man, because they felt there was a problem, his parents, well, he tried to explain it away. His parents bought it, and even then decided not to even take him home with them then, just to, at least for the rest of the day, and talk to him. And they refused. Did their refusal to even take him home, did that have something to do with this? I don't know. But one thing we'd be guaranteed, this young man was troubled. He was troubled. Also looked into the Uvalde, Texas shooting. That was the one where the police delayed 30 minutes going in, and that was all. I don't even remember how many was killed, but it was awful, right? But that young man was troubled. They said that he struggled with severe anger issues. He even killed his grandmother before he went to the school.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, what's got to go through your mind to kill Mimo? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I guess some people maybe have mean grandmothers. I don't know her. I didn't know her. All I know is my grandmother was like a saint, right? I think my grandmother knew Mother Teresa. I'm pretty sure she did. At least in my mind, she did, right? So, I think about how troubled he was. And there's article after article about how troubled he was, right? And then we have this young lady, and I'll call her young lady because that's what she was, right? But she wrestled with gender identity, right? Now, we don't want to discount their struggle, right? But I think culture is going in the wrong direction, right? We're talking about, people want to talk about gender affirmation care, basically just saying, okay, well, you're wrestling with this, so you must, in your mind, you're the opposite sex, so just be that, right? But most people don't realize that still doesn't actually fix the issue.
No.
Right?
They still battle.
They still battle. It's not the answer, right? It's not the answer. Because no matter what they do to their bodies, they know in their heart of hearts that there's still an issue, and they will wrestle with it, right? Now, people can act like they're okay, right? Because they surround themselves with people that say, that affirm them, and that, in their transition or whatever. But, that still doesn't really give them the peace that they're looking for.
Right.
And so this is not just about school shootings, right? So I don't want to come across like that, but I just wanted to share that. To open up the discussion that mental health is important.
Yeah, it is
right?
very important.
Mental health is just hugely important. And here's the thing is, mental health can, like I said, it could be a plethora of things, right? And it could be varying degrees. There are some people that are just catapulted so deep into depression that just even getting up to come out of their room to long enough to go to the bathroom, it seems like a struggle.
Yeah.
Right? But then there's other people that may wrestle with depression, but they seem to be operating okay, right? They tend to operate. They're going to work and those things, but they're still struggling with that issue.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of times you're not able to recognize it. I mean, people could be suffering from something, and it's hard to identify sometimes.
It is. And that's why, I think it's important for us, right? Because so in the book, First Aid for Emotional Hurts, right? So this book was written by Dr. Eddie Moody, who's, I think, a licensed psychologist. I think it's psychiatrist. I get them kind of mixed up, right? But he's Dr. Eddie Moody. He worked in the prison system in North Carolina for a long time. He also was pastored, and now he's the executive secretary for the National Association of Free Will Baptists. And we're so proud that he's our leader. He's a great guy. But he actually, in his book, he says, do Christians get depressed? Right? And it says sometimes people believe that a real Christian does not get depressed. He said, consider the statements below by some of the Old Testament prophets. So this is what Jonah wrote. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. That's depressed.
Yeah.
This is what Elijah said. He prayed that he might die and said, "It is enough now, Lord. Take my life, for I'm no better than my father's." There's one more. Here's Jeremiah. And we're not even getting into the psalmist, right? David, right?
Right.
Also think of Saul. Saul was so tormented in his mind that they brought David in to sing to him, to try to comfort him. This is Jeremiah. "Cursed be the day on which I was born, the day when my mother bore me, let it not be blessed." These are Old Testament prophets that found themselves in difficult circumstances and got to the point where I'd just rather be dead.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that the length of our life is set by the Lord, right? And so taking my life to me is not an option. But I believe I've been through times where I thought that I would be better if I weren't here.
Oh, I have. I mean,
Right.
especially growing up, not understanding things, don't have the confidence in the Lord that I do now. I mean, I wondered why am I even here sometimes?
Yeah.
Everybody, I think most people wrestle with that. You want to find your purpose, and if you don't know what your purpose is, then you're like, and so it snowballs. Why am I here? What am I doing? And then I think depending upon, how mentally you got to that point, because, let's face it, those things they could come, you could be mentally go down that path because inherited environmental situations. It could be health situations. It could be life stress, work, lack of sleep, drugs and alcohol. I mean, any one of those things can take you down that path.
Yeah.
And I think we all touch that at some point in our lives.
And it's a hard thing to talk about, right? Because even now, as we're talking about it and we're being open about we've had those thoughts,
Yeah.
it scares me that somebody will hear that and not listen to the rest
Right.
and think that we're okay with that. Like it's okay just to maybe do something you shouldn't. I don't know. It scares me a little bit. I feel vulnerable, right? Talking about that.
Of course.
The psalmist wrote this: "I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping." I've been there.
That's pretty depressed.
Yeah. When I got diagnosed with AS, I was doing research, right? And I even joined an AS group on social media. And I was already experiencing a lot of pain. And we've talked about that before. I don't want this to be about that. But here's the problem. A counseling book that I have, it's actually in my office at the church, that I got when I had to buy it for school when I was going to Welch. And it described a downward spiral. One thing leads to another thing and you just spiral downward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times depression happens that way. It's not a snap overnight kind of thing.
Right.
It's one thing leads to another thing. And so I was already in a lot of physical pain. And what happened was my physical pain turned into mental anguish. Because when you hurt today, and the forecast for tomorrow is just more hurt. Like there wasn't enough medicine to get me out of the pain. I'd already been through the fentanyl thing and done all that. And so, knowing medication that was going to take me out of pain just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
We even tried all those shots. Remember when I went and sat and they did 16 needles across my neck and shoulders, and I did that 2 or 3 times, and it was a painful experience to get it done, and it delivered no results. So by the time I went through that, I just wanted, I would have, some of those verses I just read, I could have easily said the same thing. And in my mind I did. I could relate to that. I'd be better off dead because I don't feel like I could accomplish anything, right? Physically, I go to work on something. I'll just be in so much pain that, doing anything physical labor around the house is just, it was just excruciating.
Yeah.
And not just then, but even later, right? So it takes you on a downward spiral, right? So pain, physical pain, can cause mental anguish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and take you on that downward spiral to the point that you're like David. I fill my bed with tears. Or Jeremiah. I'd be better off if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get to that way. And I was reading, and this was, I believe, in the CDC. I found this one. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in 10 to 24-year-olds and 25 to 35-year-olds. And that's based on 2020.
Wow. It just goes to show you that it can happen to any age. It's not just, adults. It's not just kids. I mean, mental illness can attack anybody.
Anybody.
At any time.
So, and the Mental Health Association had this: 56% of adults with mental illness receive no treatment.
Yeah.
And our state was ranked really low in West Virginia on people getting the treatment they need for mental illness.
Oh my.
Right? 19.86% of adults in America are experiencing mental illness. Right? 27 million people are experiencing mental illness and going untreated. You see, we can talk about assault weapons and we could try to reduce the number of people shot, but shouldn't we shoot for zero? I mean, shouldn't our goal be no people shot?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not just talking about school shootings. You realize shootings happen every day, right?
Yeah.
We just don't see them on the news. I mean, they happen in cities and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But not only that, we've had shootings right here on Chestnut Hill. Was it 2 years ago that a gentleman who had dementia and experienced mental illness actually shot his daughter. He was mad. Well, I say he was mad. He had dementia. Right. And he thought people were trying to harm him, and so next thing you know, I believe he shot 2 people that day. And again, I know the family sort of, but I would never mention anything like that as far as who they are. But it was in the news, local news. So right. I'm not saying anything that people don't know already. But that was dementia. That's mental illness.
It is a mental illness. Well, I think about my dad. I mean, might as well talk about it. It was a very difficult situation. My dad had a type of dementia, Lewy body dementia, I think is what they finally diagnosed him with. But it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And we were on our way back from visiting my brother. And fortunately, my brother was driving. He was in the car, and my dad, we knew he had some kind of mental thing going on. But on the way back, he kept seeing outside the car people diving into the road. He thought he was in a war zone. Well, when he did that, he reached over and grabbed the wheel of the car. He was sitting in the front seat with my brother. My brother was driving. He grabbed the wheel of the car and almost wrecked us. I had to hold him the whole way back. And
restrain him. I mean, it was
completely restrain him. Yeah, because I mean, there's nothing. I mean, how do you prepare for something like that? It can hit at any time.
Yeah. So, again, this is about having open discussion. So my mother lost a set of twins after me. So I'm the youngest. I got an older sister, just the 2 of us. But after I was born, I was a couple years old. My mother got pregnant again with twins, and she lost them. Miscarried. I think about halfway through, and man, that put my mother in a downward spiral.
Yeah, anything can take you.
And I remember as a kid, her just so upset, and I didn't understand. Right, I didn't really kind of know what was going on. All I knew was that my mother, I don't know, it was months and months. Maybe it might be even been a year or so that she wrestled with this, and she just ended up in a really bad place. And it's not something we talked about. So I can't give you, I was young, so I can't give you all the particulars of what they diagnosed her as. But I can tell you this. My mother ended up at King's Daughter Hospital up in Martinsburg. on a floor that's for folks that are wrestling with stuff and under doctor's care. And she was up there for several weeks. And all I know is we missed our mother and we were not allowed to see her.
Yeah.
My dad would come home and get a shower. We would stay at Grandma and Grandpa's house and eat there. And my dad every day would come home and shower after working in construction all day with sheet metal. And he'd come home and he'd get cleaned up. And I remember him just coming home, getting cleaned up and going out the door, telling me and my sister he loved us. And we were like, tell Mom we love her. And we didn't understand when she gonna come home. Can we go see her? And you know.
That had to be hard for you at that age, because how do you even process something like that?
We really couldn't, and I didn't really know until I got older and understand that she actually had, back then they called it a mental breakdown. I don't know what you call it. I'm sure it was be diagnosed as something different today. And I wish I'd have known the details, but it's probably good that I didn't. I never asked when I got older, hey, what exactly happened? I kind of wish I would have in some years, so I would know.
Yeah.
In case there's something I ever saw, something happened to me like that, you know. But
Right.
just threw her in a spiral, so she ended up there in the doctor's care for several weeks, and I can't remember exactly how long. It felt like an eternity to us. But we sometimes we'd hear my dad. He could only cook two things. That was eggs and hot dogs. And,
That's why you like eggs and hot dogs.
yeah, well, I can tell you that the eggs never had the yolk in them. There was never dibby eggs. He wasn't good enough to flip an egg and keep the yolk intact, right? It was scrambled. And hot dogs, my dad had this way of fixing hot dogs. He put hot dogs in a pot of water, put them on boil, and when the hot dogs split open, they were done.
Amen.
That's how he cooked them, right? And
nothing wrong with that.
so my dad was a proud man. And so he did not want to burden my grandma and grandpa. So sometimes he would come home and cook like that for us and then take us down so we didn't have to eat there. But trust me, we wanted to eat with grandma and grandpa.
I'm sure grandma.
That food was better. But my dad being, he wanted to provide for his kids.
Yeah,
so,
and that's good because he provided that family atmosphere that I think that's important. And I think maybe, depending upon the age level, you might have been too young. But I mean, talking about it might have helped you process a little bit better.
Yeah, and it probably would have. Back then you didn't talk about those things, and honestly, in the Christian world, right, it's even worse.
Yes, it is.
Right. Well, you're a Christian, you shouldn't really experience it. And that's why I read that excerpt from Dr. Moody's book, and he even goes on to say there, like if someone is having issues, they need to get help.
Yeah.
And maybe start first with your physician, your family physician.
Yeah.
Go to them first, because you got to realize sometimes mental can be related to physical.
Yeah.
There could be a chemical imbalance.
Yeah.
There could be all these things, and I just, man, I don't know what we wrote so many notes, and you haven't read from yours. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of dominating.
No, that's okay. You know what? First of all, it's hard to identify, but once you do identify it, I think. So there's some helps that you can do to help this person maybe heal. Again, we're not psychiatrists or psychologists, but from what I've read, and I tried to look into it a little bit because I wanted to know. I wanted to know how, if somebody comes to me and I see that they're in anguish or they're stressed or they have anxiety, how do you go about trying to help somebody like that? And I think the one thing that was very common. Obviously, go to the doctor, like you said, but have group therapy, talk therapy is very, very important. Getting them to, first of all, be around other people that may be going through the same thing so that they can relate. They don't feel like they're alone. But talk to them without, trying to fix it. Sometimes people just need to be heard. They need to feel like they're in a safe environment where they can be heard. And I think so often, like that one young man, he wasn't being heard. His parents wouldn't hear him. They were off doing their own thing. And kids today sometimes don't have that. I know sometimes you have two people working, but provide your kids with, a good sounding board, somebody that they can communicate with, whether it's a grandmother or whether it's, a neighbor. Like that neighbor was really willing, seemed like, to help. So getting them to talk about it is really important. And trying to listen to what they have to say rather than fix it, I think, is important. And trying to relate to what they're going through, I mean, you may not have the exact same situation, but try and understand, because they're not doing it on purpose. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people, Christians or non-Christians, I mean, sometimes they want to look at somebody and think, well, they brought it on themselves. Well, no, sometimes they don't always bring it on themselves. Like we said, it could be a health issue. It could be environmental issue. Maybe they're in a bad situation. You see somebody who's stressed and always upset, but maybe their home life is not a very good home life. Maybe they're constantly being pulled one direction or another. I mean, it's hard. So try and get the family involved. If you see somebody, peer support, somebody, one of their friends, sit down. And one thing that's really important that I actually agree with, because I know personally I feel better, but when you try to eat better,
oh yeah, it could have a huge effect on
you.
you.
It has a huge effect on not just your physical, but your mental. You think a lot clearer when you're filled with, when you're filled with candy and junk, your body, you just naturally feel poorly. So try and help that person maybe eat differently. Exercise. You can relieve a lot of stress and anxiety when you exercise. It's a good release. And and sleep, just trying to get sleep, because I know mentally when you have, and I know this from a personal level, when I have so much on my brain and I just get uptight about it and I can't figure out how to take care of it, I'm up all night, and that makes it even worse, because then the next day I'm cranky, I'm angry. Well, imagine somebody who's not able to...
Did you not sleep good last night?
I did. Imagine somebody who's already struggling with things, not being able to sleep. It's like you said, it's a spiral that keeps going down and down. But I think there's things that we can do to try and help if we notice. And again, communication and talk therapy is huge. Yeah. So I would start there.
Well, you mentioned something that, sometimes people are like, well, they brought it on themselves. So what?
Yeah.
I mean, haven't you made mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. They need help.
I don't care if they did bring it on themselves.
Yeah.
They're still a human, and we're all flawed. So how could I look down my nose?
Exactly.
Right? It's kind of, get the speck out of your brother's eye while you got a beam in yours.
Exactly.
Right? I don't care if they did it to themselves, right? They still are human. They're still made in God's image, and I still want to help them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody keeps repeating, you try to help them and they keep repeating.
We can't.
Then maybe they need to get some.
them.
They need to get some more professional help, right?
Right.
But really, what we want to bring out is just awareness that mental health is so important.
Oh, it is.
And I just keep thinking, how many of these lives could have been spared if somebody would have loved on these people? That Michigan kid, 15 years old.
Yeah.
What if somebody would have spent some time with him?
Yeah.
And just loved on him? Maybe those 4 people wouldn't be dead right now. That young man that had all the anger issues down there in Uvalde. It sounds to me like he was loved. His grandmother took care of him and stuff. But there's something was going on with that young man. And maybe if they could have just got him the right help. If 27 million people are having some type of mental struggle without getting help.
Yeah.
That's 27 million and one too many.
Yeah.
We should get help, and especially, again, in Christian circles, there's a lot of people that, you shouldn't really have to do that, just pray more. And folks, I'm telling you, get help.
It goes beyond prayer. Prayer, definitely.
God can do amazing things. We know that He's able. But He gave us tools.
And He wants us. He uses us to help others as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's the important thing. I would imagine a lot of these people that have these mental issues or that are dealing with anxiety, dealing with stress, they feel very alone. And being plugged into your kids, being plugged into people that you know, your friends, being plugged in and noticing when they're struggling and doing something about it is really, really important, because I think a lot of the times we see somebody, we don't know what to say or we don't know what to do. Well, maybe we don't, but just being there for them sometimes they just need to know that somebody cares about them. And I would imagine a lot of these shooters have felt pretty alone.
Okay.
Either they've been left alone just to do, and I say video games, it could be anything. Maybe they're just left to their own devices. And I do think video games have a lot to do with it. It promotes,
Social media has a lot to do
social
with
media.
And I mean, that's a proven fact.
Bullies. I mean,
Yeah.
people, if they're being bullied all the time, I mean, we need to be more aware of what's going on.
I was reading that the suicide rate is up over the last decade by 29%. It went from like 8.6 teens per 100,000 up to like 10.8. Right, so there's this huge spike in that. Even the CDC, and several other, national agencies talk about how social media has had a huge impact on our young people, especially middle school.
Yeah.
Right, their bodies are developing faster than their brain, honestly, and they're already wrestling with who they are, puberty, and all of that, and then. They wrestle with the fact that they post a picture or someone else posts a picture and how many likes they get. I've even read it somewhere that Instagram tried to like curb some of that with the likes and all that stuff, because it was causing some issues with teens, that they base their worth on the response they get on social media. And dare I say this, sometimes it's time to pick up the phone, not text. Sometimes a human voice.
Yes.
And the thing is you can't make someone good help. We all know that. But if you show that you care about someone, right, maybe that is the catalyst for them to go get help.
Absolutely.
If they know that they're going to be loved and not judged if they seek help, maybe they'll be more apt to do it.
Yes.
And so I don't know who's going to listen to this, but let's talk. There are, maybe you're out there and you're the one struggling. Number one thing is this: you're not alone. God does love you, and let me encourage you to seek help. If you're struggling with thoughts of not wanting to be here, if you're struggling with thoughts of hurting yourself or hurting others, if you're having thoughts of despair, if I can't list all the thoughts. There's just too many. If you're struggling, please get help.
Talk to somebody.
Yeah. Don't be prideful. Yeah, it may start. Maybe it just starts with being honest. Is there someone in your life that you can trust? And if there is, maybe go to that person and say, I just need to talk. I just need to. I'm having these feelings, and I need to talk to somebody, right? Yeah. And if you don't have someone, first off, my heart will break for you. It just, I don't even know how to describe how that makes me feel. But with God, we know that we're never alone. But there are people out there. There are helps. There's the National Suicide Hotline. There are people out there. We'll put our email address in the comments if you want to contact us, and just so we can make a contact with you. We'd be more than happy to do that, and help. Maybe you're not from around here. I don't know. But, we'll do our best to find something. But Worst case, you're at least going to get a warm voice, because if you reach out to us, we'll set something up so that we can talk to you.
Absolutely.
Again, we're not professionals. Please understand that we're not professionals,
No,
but
we care.
we're two people that love Jesus and we care. And if you're a human being, then that means you're made in His image, and we want to help you. So there's that group of people, and please know that if nothing more, that God has laid you on our heart. Right?
Don't.
Our heart is heavy.
Yeah, don't base your self-worth on what other people tell
what
you.
other people say. Please don't.
Or what people say, what people do. Don't base your self-worth on. You are more valuable than what other people say. They can't tell you
No.
who you are and what you've done, and so don't rely on that.
Listen, I lived most of my life as an overweight man. Then I started losing my hair at the end of high school. And I look in the mirror. And I didn't like who I see. I can't tell you how many times I wouldn't eat around other people because I was a big guy. And I just felt like people were looking at me, you know, like when I'd be at like a luncheon for work, and I was like, I just didn't feel comfortable that. There's been times where I have been to conferences and I stood the entire time because I didn't feel comfortable with the chair I was sitting on. Like it wouldn't hold me, and I was already embarrassed. And I thought if something breaks and I fall, then I'd be the laughing stock of everything, and it makes you not want to be around people.
Yeah.
Makes you not want to engage in those places, and it makes you feel like you're just less than. And I know I'm not the only one that's ever felt that.
No.
And I don't care how strong you are. I've been through some stuff, and I feel like I'm mentally strong in some areas. You know, went off of fentanyl cold turkey on my own decision, and we had plenty of it on the shelf, and I was able to determine that I was going to do it. But because you're strong in one area doesn't mean you're strong in all areas.
Yeah.
I hated what I saw in the mirror. I hated how I felt. And I didn't really know what to do about it. But I can't tell you how many times I just felt like I just wanted to go hide somewhere because of my appearance. And because of the circumstance I was in, because of my weight. And I felt like people were judging me. And you know what? The thing is, probably a lot of them weren't.
No. And if they were wrong for doing it.
Yeah. But you know, because of my job, I hold a professional position, and I have to, meet with business owners and stuff like that, and I just was embarrassed all the time. And that's a mental health issue. And it hurt. So that's one group of people. If you're out there and it's you, please know that somebody cares, and we'll find a way to help you somehow and get you to the right people. So then there's a second group of people, and that's the people that are around other people who are hurting, that are struggling with some kind of mental illness. Love on them and try to help them. Just don't ignore. I feel like we're just living in a society where people see something. Listen, you remember in the news a couple years ago where a woman was raped in the stairway of the New York City subway?
I think I remember that.
People were so self-absorbed that they walked by
Taking
a woman
video,
being raped
video.
and did nothing. Nothing. Listen, we have to quit living that way. I think a lot of people, they don't want to engage because they don't want to be troubled with it, and they got their own problems and everything. Listen, the society is not going to get better until we quit being self-absorbed and we start caring about one another.
Yeah.
If you see somebody that is hurting or even angry or something, listen, don't just ignore it and go away so that you're not bothered. Because you might be the one person that says something to that person that may
Make a difference. Yeah.
You may stop a catastrophe just by spending a moment, taking a moment out of your life to say hi. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? You look like you're having a bad day. You know, you look like you're upset. Is there anything I can do to help you? You know, would you like to talk about it? Is there something going on? Or is it, you know, hey, I may not be able to fix it, but I can listen. I'm a good listener.
Yeah.
You know, anything like that.
A lot of times that's all somebody needs is just someone that is willing to listen.
Somebody that'll say that, you know, that they care, right?
Right. To take the time.
Yeah.
That person is valuable enough to take the time.
Yeah. So if you're the one out there that is struggling with something mentally, listen, we're praying for you. We're getting ready to pray for you. But seek some help, please. We're just, I can't say that enough, right? Don't be embarrassed, and don't let your pride stand in the way of you getting to someone who can help you. There are professionals out there. There's also pastors and churches and people in those churches that will love you.
Yes.
Right? Without reservation, right? Unconditional love. But, so I don't care if you go, that you seek out a church, professional psychiatrist, psychologist, I don't know. But there's just too many people out there that won't go get help because they're scared of maybe being judged or what other people will think. I talked to somebody one time that worked in the VA system. They were not a doctor in any way. They happened just to be someone who was involved with paperwork and stuff like that. And there's this thought process out there for like veterans. They feel like if they are honest about PTSD, you know, about their struggles with that, and that's another thing that we probably should have mentioned, right?
Yeah.
PTSD, and PTSD, you don't have to go to war to have it.
Right.
You know, there could be something that happened in your life but there's veterans that wouldn't seek help for PTSD because they were scared they were going to take their guns away from them. And that's sad, right? These people fought for our country.
Yeah.
And saw war in the Middle East and come back and they're scared to get help because of fear that their rights are going to be taken away from them. Listen, I don't know how to fix that. I'll just be honest. That's above my pay grade. But they need the help. And then I found out, though, it's like that's not really what happens. Right? They don't go confiscate their guns if they're struggling with that. Now, if they pose a threat to, you know, to society, or they threaten or do something like that, then, you know, that'll have to be dealt with.
That's
right?
Another issue.
But, you know, it's just there's too many people that aren't saying something. There's too many people that aren't offering a moment of love, right? To say I care.
Yeah.
The young girl who shot the folks down in Nashville. I was reading an article. She actually contacted someone she knew and told them that she was going to die that day. And I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but she also said that, you know, that she left a trail behind that people would understand in time, and that she left information so that they would know why she did what she did. Now, that hasn't been released yet. We don't know what that was, but I don't know if it was a manifesto or of some sort that will give us clues as to why she was so troubled. But she knew that what she was going to do, and she knew that she was going to die that day because she was going to act in such a way and keep shooting until somebody shot her. So she planned to die that day. It wasn't by accident. That was in the article. And so, you know, again, we're kind of centering this on that depression and kind of stuff, but it just, there's such thing. I knew a guy that struggled with schizophrenia, right? And there, you know, it was some kind of chemical and thing that he had, you know, and they were able to get him on medicine that he was able to stabilize and live a normal life, even though he had that struggle. Yeah. Right? But he got the help, and I'm so thankful he did. But there's a lot of people out here that are not getting the help they need. And I don't, you know, maybe some of it is our healthcare system. You know, that's possible. But I think that needs to be the conversation. We're so worried about how many bullets a magazine holds. Let's talk about who holds the magazine.
Yes.
Let's talk about that and let's do something. You remember the term, if you see something, say something, right? Now listen, say something to me is not going turning somebody in. Hey, I think somebody so-and-so over there has got a problem, right? Now there may be a time where someone's acting in a violent way that you do need to call the authorities or whatever, but if you see somebody that looks like they're having a bad day, it may just be a bad day.
Right.
But that bad day may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. If people just cared enough about one another to say, hey, you look like you're having a bad day. Can I help you? What can I do?
Or give them a smile.
Yeah. Give them a smile. Yeah, cup of coffee maybe, a couple minutes of your time, a donut.
Be personal with them. Talk to them.
Whatever it may be, just like, you look like you're having a bad day, and is there anything I do for you? No, I'm fine, okay. Well, you know what, I just want to let you know, I'm going to pray for you. And if you do need something, you let me know. I'm going to be down that cubicle, the last one on the left. Come down and see me, right? Do something.
Yes.
We live in a digital age. Everybody's texting and emailing, and we don't talk anymore, right? We don't even spell out words anymore, right? And I think that's why we see suicide rates going up, is because we've gotten less personal.
Yes.
We've gotten digital, and digital just don't feel the same. I can FaceTime you when I'm away for work and I have to travel, and I can FaceTime you. I like being able to see you. I feel like we're on the Jetsons. Remember Jetsons had that video phone, Mr. Spacey would call. And,
oh my goodness.
Right? I love that. Right? His boy Elroy.
Dear, you're showing your age.
I know, right? I like the Astro, Rory Roach. But when I see you on FaceTime, it's nice. I get to see you. But I like seeing you in person better. I like being able to feel the warmth of your hand when I touch it. I like being able to, instead of kissing you on FaceTime like that.
Yeah.
I like being able to kiss your lips.
I like when you kiss my lips.
I know, right, babe? We'll be back in a few minutes.
No, stop.
No, it's just we're losing the human side of us. Our society's losing the human part. People are wanting to live in the metaverse, right? The VR goggles, and trying to go through life as if it's some virtual reality. It's just reality, and we're losing the human touch.
Yeah.
And I believe that's why people are hurting more today than they ever have. Let's be human again. Let's care and show our emotion and be real with who we are and be honest. Maybe it's time to turn some digital things off and just go outside.
Go have a cup of coffee
Have
with
a
your
cup
friend.
of coffee, sit on the porch, talk a little bit.
We need more front porches.
Oh, for sure. We got a cool front porch.
We do.
We do, yeah. Got to get our other chairs out, comfy chairs, right? It's a nice night out, maybe have to go sit. So, listen, we love you guys. We want to pray for you. And just pray that, if nothing more, then we just raise the awareness of mental health and maybe just cause you to look at things a little different. And if you see somebody struggling, just lend them a moment.
Yeah,
right?
Pay attention, notice.
Yeah.
Don't put your head down and go through life just self. Don't think of just self, but think of others. See people around you. Notice.
Yeah, guns are just guns. Let's talk about the real deal.
Yeah.
That's people.
Yeah.
Right? It's funny when you take a rock, and you put it in the hands of David. He slew giants with that rock.
Yeah.
But Cain took a rock and he murdered his brother.
Killed his brother.
Right? But without David or without Cain, it's just a rock. It's what you do with it that makes a difference.
Yes.
David used it for good. Cain used it for evil. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about guns. Talk about people. Hurting people. Disturbed people. They need help. Let's mobilize and let's do it.
Yeah.
And make a difference. Time to pray. Father, we love you. And Lord, we just thank you for this time that we're able to spend. Lord, I don't know who will hear this and listen. But Lord, if there are folks out here that are listening that are hurting, Father, I just pray that, Lord, that you would raise somebody up that would notice. If there's somebody out there that's struggling somehow mentally, God, I just pray that, Lord, that you would raise somebody up that maybe go lend a hand or a moment or a hug or whatever. Lord, not only that, but Father, I pray that you help them get to the place they need to be to get help. Whether that's just another human being or whether that's a professional doctor. Lord, maybe it's a physical issue. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Father, I just pray for those who are hurting and those who are struggling with mental illness. And Father, I pray that they get the help that they need. And Lord, if there's something that you want us to do, Father, I pray that you, your Holy Spirit will lead us, that we may be able to make contact and make a difference in their lives for your glory. And Lord, for those that maybe encounter someone who is going through this, Father, I pray that you give them the wisdom, that you give them the words that's needed to be able to help that individual, whether it's help them get to somewhere where they can get help or, Lord, or whether it's, I don't know, just maybe having someone else to talk to them. But God, I just pray that, Lord, that we'll be aware, that you'll help us and lead us with your Holy Spirit to be aware when people around us are going through these things so that we may be an instrument for you to help them and to recognize that they have a need. And Father, I pray that when we see that need, that, Lord, that we won't just walk on by, but we'll see that as an opportunity that you've given us, Lord, to help another human being. Lord, whether they made the mess on their own or whether it's just a circumstance out of the control, Lord, it doesn't matter. We know that you love him. Lord, there was a thief that was hung right beside you. He deserved to be there. He was sentenced to death to be executed right beside you. And you cared for him. And he never was baptized. He never made it to Sunday school. He never did any of that. But still, yet you promised him that he would be with you in paradise because he believed. So Lord, we don't want to reject anyone. It doesn't matter what they're struggling with. Lord, you've called us to love. And Father, I pray that you give us the strength to do just that.
Yes.
So Lord, we pray this today in the name of your beautiful Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week. And obviously Dash likes prayer because he tried to lick us the whole time. And Dash, say goodbye, buddy. See ya.
Bye. Bye, guys.
See you guys.